I remember the glow of my phone lighting up the dark bedroom, cold, sterile, almost surgical, cutting through the last fragile seconds of sleep. I reached for it with the clumsy hopefulness of someone expecting a good morning text, maybe a silly emoji, maybe just his usual, "Wake up, sleepyhead." But instead, I saw a paragraph, a long, gray block of text that made my stomach tighten before my brain even processed the words. "I've realized I can't accept your emotional baggage anymore. It's too much for me to deal with. We're done. Please don't contact me." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I sat up slowly, the sheets pooling around my waist, the quiet of the room suddenly louder than any scream. My heart started racing in that sharp, erratic way it does when anxiety ambushes me, like someone had hooked a live wire to my ribs. Just 12 hours earlier, I had been lying beside him in this same bed, believing I was safe enough to say the words I rarely shared with anyone. I told him about my anxiety, about the pressure at work, about my father's health scare, about waking up at 3 a.m. with my mind tearing itself apart. And he held me. He kissed my forehead. He murmured, "I'm glad you told me. We'll get through it together." Together. What a beautiful, stupid word. The next morning, he walked away from the relationship through a text message so cold it felt machine written. I must have drafted 15 different replies, angry ones, wounded ones begging him to explain how honesty had suddenly become a crime. My hands trembled so hard I could barely type. But eventually, everything inside me went still, quiet, clear. I sent only one sentence. "Thank you for showing me who you really are." And then I blocked him everywhere. For 6 months, I rebuilt myself from the wreckage he left behind. I worked, I healed, I breathed again. Until the day he found a way back into my life. Not with love, not with regret, but with need. Because when he finally came crawling back, it wasn't my heart he wanted. It was my money. If you had asked me a year before the breakup whether I believed in forever, I would have said yes, because I thought I had already found mine. I was 31, working as a project manager at a construction company. My life was stable, structured, predictable, in all the ways anxiety likes. I had my routines dialed in, morning medication with water and a protein bar, therapy every other Thursday, a run after work when my thoughts got too loud. I wasn't perfect, but I was functioning, thriving even. And then he appeared, 28, charming in an understated way, the kind of man who made you feel chosen just by looking at you a second longer than necessary. We met at a friend of a friend's barbecue. I wasn't planning on going. Big gatherings always made my chest feel a little tight, but he walked up to me near the drink table, grinned, and said, "I don't know anyone here except my cousin. Can I hide next to you?" It was disarming. Soft, easy. We talked for hours. About music, about work, about travel dreams we both secretly knew we might never follow through on. He made me laugh the way I only laughed around people I trusted deeply. Things moved fast after that. Within 6 months, we were practically living together. His toothbrush beside mine, his socks in my laundry, his head on my lap during movie nights. Within a year, we were scrolling rental listings together, comparing square footage and calculating budgets like two people planning a shared future. I remember staring at a small 2-bedroom in particular and thinking, this is where we'll put our Christmas tree. I genuinely believed he was the man I'd marry. But even early on, there were signs I didn't want to see. Tiny things, moments that felt off in the pit of my stomach. He loved the easy parts of me, the version of myself that was relaxed, joking, playful. But whenever I had an off day, whenever anxiety was louder than usual, he seemed uncomfortable. Not cruel, not dismissive, just slightly impatient, as if emotions made him itch. Once, after I canceled dinner plans because I felt overwhelmed, he joked, "You worry too much. You should learn how to switch it off." He said it lightly, but the words stuck with me. His family was polite when I met them, warm even, but there was a subtle undercurrent I couldn't name. His mother asked too many questions about my job, my stability, my stress tolerance. His sister once teased him, "You always pick girls who need fixing." He laughed it off. I didn't. Still, he was supportive in other ways. He brought me tea when I worked late. He texted me reminders to eat lunch. He listened to me vent about suppliers and contractors. He leaned on me too, especially when he struggled at work or argued with his parents. I was his emotional anchor, and I carried that role proudly. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe I made it too easy to take my strength for granted. Because for most of our relationship, he never had to see the hardest parts of my anxiety. I managed them alone, on my runs, in therapy session, in quiet moments behind a closed bathroom door. And because he didn't witness the internal storms, he convinced himself they didn't exist. He loved the version of me he thought was simple. He didn't know that simplicity was the result of effort, constant, deliberate effort. And when life finally became too heavy for me to maintain that illusion, when I reached out, not to burden him, but to let him in, he discovered who I really was. And he walked away. Before he would come crawling back months later, and before everything spiraled into chaos, I had to face the truth. He didn't leave because I was too much. He left because he was too little. Looking back, the unraveling didn't start with the breakup text. It began weeks earlier, quietly, subtly, like a hairline crack in a wall you don't notice until the whole structure groans. 8 months before he left me, my life slid into a perfect storm. At work, 3 major construction projects were falling apart at the same time. Delayed shipments, contractors quitting, a budget dispute that left everyone pointing fingers at everyone else. I was suddenly juggling 60-hour weeks, frantic calls, and spreadsheets that looked like crime scenes. Around the same time, my dad went to the doctor for what he thought was heartburn. A scan found something. The words, "we don't know yet," were enough to send my mind into a familiar spiral, one I'd spent years learning to manage, but that still had the power to yank the ground out from under me. I didn't sleep. I woke up at 3 a.m. with my heart pounding so violently it felt like it was trying to run out of my body. I lost weight without trying. I carried stress like a second spine. And he noticed at first. "Babe, you okay? You seem tired," he said one evening as we waited for takeout. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to say, "I'm scared, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how to slow my thoughts down." But the way his eyes flicked back to his phone, the slight impatience in the tap of his fingers, it made the words shrivel in my throat. "I'm fine," I said instead. Later that night, he mentioned he felt like I was distant lately. Not concerned, annoyed, like my emotional bandwidth was a customer service issue affecting his satisfaction. Still, he didn't pull away entirely. He hugged me when I came home late. He sent heart emojis on stressful days. He asked about my dad, though his tone suggested he was checking a box. But something had shifted. When I needed quiet, he called me dramatic. When I double-checked plans because anxiety made me fear forgetting something, he teased, "You're overthinking again." When I hesitated about a weekend trip because of Dad's tests, he sighed and said, "You can't let every little thing get to you." Every little thing, as if my world wasn't trembling, as if his discomfort outweighed my father's health. The more stressed I became, the more strained he felt. His laughter grew shorter, his patience thinner, his affection conditional. There was one night I'll never forget. I was sitting on his couch, staring blankly at a muted TV, lost in thoughts I couldn't untangle. He walked in, glanced at me, and frowned. "You have that look again." "What look?" I whispered. I don't know, anxious one," he said, waving his hand vaguely, as if brushing away smoke. "It makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong." For a moment, I just blinked at him. My anxiety, my internal storm, was an inconvenience to his peace. "I'm not blaming you," I said gently. "I'm just going through a lot." He didn't reassure me. He didn't sit beside me. He simply shrugged. "Well, maybe don't think so much." A harmless suggestion to him. A knife wrapped in cotton to me. I realized then that he didn't truly understand mental health. He didn't want to. To him, emotional depth was a burden, not a bond. Yet I still believed in us. I still believed he would show up when it mattered. I didn't know then that the moment I finally trusted him enough to open the door fully, he would choose to walk out instead. The night everything fell apart didn't start dramatically. It started with a simple question. We were sitting on my couch after dinner, takeout again because I didn't have the energy to cook. The living room was dim, lit only by the soft amber glow of a floor lamp. My laptop sat open on the coffee table, a half-finished email blinking accusingly at me. I'd been distant, quiet, more inside my head than in the room. He leaned against the armrest, scrolling on his phone, and without looking up, asked, "Why have you been so off lately?" There was no warmth in it, just mild irritation, like he was asking why the Wi-Fi was slow. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was Dad's health, the insomnia, the pressure at work. Maybe it was the way the words, "every little thing," still echoed in my chest like a bruise. But something inside me cracked, just enough for honesty to slip through. I closed my laptop gently, took a shaky breath, and said, Do you really want to know? He finally looked at me. Of course I do. I held his gaze, searching for softness, but all I found was impatience wearing a polite mask. Still, I tried. God, I tried. I told him everything. The spiraling thoughts, the sleep deprivation, the panic that tightened around my ribs at dawn, the fear of losing my dad, the unbearable pressure of carrying 3 collapsing projects at once, the way anxiety clawed at my throat in moments I least expected. My voice trembled, but I kept going, not asking him to fix it, just asking him to understand me. I've already scheduled extra therapy sessions, I added, trying to reassure him. I'm handling it. I just needed you to know why I've been distant. When I finally fell silent, it felt like I'd just set down a heavy weight I'd been carrying alone for weeks. He nodded slowly. Wow, that sounds really hard. Then he pulled me into a hug, mechanical, brief, like checking off a box. I'm glad you told me, he murmured into my hair. We'll get through it together. Together. That word warmed me then. I didn't know it was a lie. We went to bed tangled in each other's arms. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sliver of hope. I slept, with the kind of deep, aching relief that comes only after holding your breath too long. But when I woke the next morning, the other side of the bed was cold. His shoes were gone. His jacket was missing from the hook. The silence felt wrong. It wasn't until I picked up my phone that I understood why. A single notification, a single message, a single sentence that ripped the floor out from under me. I've realized I can't accept your emotional baggage anymore. It's too much for me to deal with. We're done. Please don't contact me. My breath stopped mid-inhale. I read it again, and again, and again. My ears rang. My vision blurred. My hands went numb. It wasn't just a breakup. It was abandonment in the moment I finally let myself be seen. He didn't say, I'm scared. He didn't say, I need time. He didn't say, let's talk through this. He said, your vulnerability disgusts me enough to walk away. I felt something inside me collapse. Something I had spent years building through therapy, through medication, through courage. The belief that I could be loved even with my anxiety. The belief that I wasn't too much. I sat on the edge of the bed, the morning light spilling through the blinds in thin, unforgiving lines across my bare legs. My throat tightened. My breath hitched. It felt like my heart was sprinting into a wall over and over again. I drafted reply after reply, my fingers trembling. Can we talk? I don't understand. You said we'd get through it together. I trusted you. Please don't do this. Delete, delete, delete. My therapist once told me, people reveal themselves in the moments that inconvenience them. He had revealed himself fully. No empathy, no commitment, no resilience, no love, not the real kind. Finally, through the haze of panic and betrayal, a strange clarity washed over me, a quiet strength I didn't know I had left. I typed, "Thank you for showing me who you really are," and I blocked him. The room was silent. The air felt thin. But somewhere beneath the devastation, a seed was planted, one I wouldn't recognize until months later, when everything escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. Because this wasn't the end. This was the beginning of a storm he never expected I would survive. The hours after the breakup text felt unreal, like I was moving underwater. Everything was muffled. Sound, light, even my own thoughts. I remember sitting on the floor with my back against the edge of the bed, legs pulled to my chest like I was trying to hold myself together physically, because emotionally, I was already unraveling. My mind kept looping the same question. How could honesty end a 2-year relationship? But the deeper question, the one that hurt more, was, had he ever really known me at all? I didn't cry right away. Shock has a way of freezing tears before they can fall. I just sat there staring at the message, reading it over and over until the words blurred and the meaning dissolved into raw sound. Baggage. Too much. Done. Don't contact me. No goodbye. No compassion. Just rejection dressed up as clarity. Eventually, I stood up and moved through my apartment on autopilot. I showered without feeling the water. I dressed without noticing what I put on. I made coffee I didn't drink. My hands shook every time my phone buzzed, but the notifications were just spam emails or apps reminding me to hydrate. Small, stupid details that felt insulting next to the crater opening inside me. By afternoon, the panic finally thawed into grief. I cried until my throat burned. I cried until my jaw ached from holding in sobs. I cried because the man I loved had looked at the most vulnerable part of me and decided it made me disposable. And yet, even through the hurt, another thought crept in, quiet but persistent. He left because I trusted him, not because I failed him. That thought didn't erase the pain, but it kept me from collapsing entirely. I didn't respond to him again. I didn't break the block. Even in devastation, I still had a thin thread of self-respect to cling to. The days that followed were a patchwork of therapy appointments, long talks with friends, and early morning runs where I tried to outrun the hurt pounding inside my chest. I told my therapist everything, every detail, every thought, every fear that maybe I was too much. She reminded me that vulnerability is not a burden, that healthy love makes space for struggle, that abandoning someone in the moment they open up says more about them than the person they leave. My friends were angrier than I was. One said, "He didn't break up with you, he revealed himself." Another said, "Imagine being so emotionally stunted you think honesty is baggage." I tried to let their words stitch me back together. The hardest part wasn't losing him. It was losing the version of him I thought existed. The man who brought me tea, who laughed into my neck, who said we'd get through hard things together. Realizing that man never truly existed was its own kind of heartbreak. I focused on rebuilding myself piece by piece. I adjusted my medication with my doctor. I forced myself to eat again. I showed up to work even when my chest felt tight. And slowly, the fog thinned. 3 months later, I moved into a new apartment across town. The old place felt haunted, every corner holding a memory I didn't want to carry anymore. I packed my things quietly, pausing only once when I found his hoodie at the back of a drawer. I didn't keep it. I didn't want anything that smelled like a life built on conditions. When the cream-colored envelope arrived in my mailbox, I didn't recognize the handwriting at first. But as soon as I saw his name in the return address corner, a cold ripple went through my stomach. 6 months. 6 months of silence. 6 months of healing. The timing wasn't coincidence. Some part of me already knew that. I held the envelope for a long moment before opening it. 4 handwritten pages. Emotional, dramatic, apologetic. A monologue crafted to sound sincere. I miss you. I think about you every day. I made a huge mistake. I didn't treat you the way you deserved. I want to talk, maybe rebuild something. Build. But then, there it was, buried on page 3, so carefully tucked behind romantic regret, it was almost insulting. He had lost his job, his lease was ending. He was struggling financially, and he needed help getting back on his feet. My chest didn't hurt this time, my breath stayed steady, my hands didn't shake. Because suddenly it was all so clear. He didn't want me back. He wanted the stability I represented. He wanted the woman who budgeted, planned, organized, supported, soothed. He wanted a lifeline, not love. I folded the letter neatly, placed it in my desk drawer, and felt a quiet, heavy certainty settle inside me. I survived losing him. I wasn't going to survive carrying him again. And without a second thought, I didn't respond. I didn't owe him closure. I didn't owe him comfort. And I certainly didn't owe him money. What I didn't realize yet was how far he would go when silence didn't give him what he wanted. Ignoring the letter felt strangely liberating. No panic, no guilt. Just a steady, grounded sense of self-protection. I thought that would be the end of it, that he would interpret silence the way any reasonable person would, but apparently reason was not something he intended to use. 3 days after I tucked his handwritten apology into my desk drawer, my doorbell rang on a Saturday afternoon. I was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, the radio humming softly, when my phone buzzed with a notification from my video doorbell. The moment I saw the image, my knife froze mid-air. It was him. He was standing outside my door like he belonged there, like our breakup had never happened, like 6 months of silence hadn't meant anything. He shifted his weight nervously, then pressed the doorbell again. The hollow echo rang through my apartment, each chime scraping against my spine. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. He waited a moment, then knocked, lightly at first, then louder, then again, and again. "Please," he said through the door, his voice slightly muffled. "I just want to talk. Please just talk to me." I watched him through the camera feed on my phone. He stayed for 15 minutes, pacing, knocking, trying to peer through the peephole even though he couldn't see anything. My heart raced, but not from longing, not from hurt. It was fear wrapped in disbelief, tied together with a thread of anger. When he finally gave up, he slid a folded note under my door. The paper brushed against the floor with a soft sound that made my stomach twist. "I know you're still mad," the note read, "but I'm parked outside. I'll wait. Come down when you're ready." I wasn't going anywhere. He waited for over an hour. I knew because I checked the camera obsessively, watching his car sitting by the curb like a warning sign. When he finally pulled away, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. That night, he emailed me. I hadn't even remembered he still had my personal email. This time, the tone was different, less apologetic, more accusatory. He wrote that I was being cruel, punishing him, proving I hadn't grown at all through therapy. He said a healthy person would have the decency to have a conversation. The manipulation was almost artful. He weaponized the very vulnerability he'd walked away from. I didn't reply. I saved the email, but I didn't give him what he wanted. But he wasn't done, not even close. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from a mutual friend. Actually, the mutual friends, the couple who introduced us at that barbecue 2 years before. The wife texted first, saying he had called her sobbing because I was ghosting him and he didn't understand why I was being so cold. I stared at the message, stunned by the audacity. He hadn't told her the truth. He hadn't told her about the breakup text, the emotional baggage line, the months of silence, the manipulative letter asking for money. No, he wanted sympathy. He wanted someone to convince me to take him back, or to help him financially. I typed a short reply, attached the screenshot of the breakup text, and sent it. Nothing more, nothing less. Her response didn't come for hours. When it did, it was short. I'm so sorry, I had no idea. Later that evening, her husband messaged me too, apologizing for his wife's involvement, saying they both understood why I wanted nothing to do with him. But he still wasn't done. 3 days after that, a voicemail appeared from an unknown number. I pressed play and nearly dropped my phone when I heard the voice. His mother. She spoke with the confidence of someone who believed her son could do no wrong. She told me her son had made a mistake, but everyone makes mistakes. She said I needed to be the bigger person, that as someone with anxiety, I should understand what he was going through. She even said I was being petty and vindictive by refusing to help him in his time of need. The irony burned hotter than anger. I didn't call her back. But something in me hardened. My silence wasn't getting through. My boundaries weren't being respected. His desperation was escalating. So I finally responded, one clean, direct email to him. I received your letter, your emails, and your mother's voicemail. I'm not interested in reconnecting, meeting for coffee, or providing financial assistance. Please stop contacting me, and please stop asking others to contact me on your behalf. I wish you well, but I've moved on. I thought that would finally end it. It didn't. 2 days later, he sent a long, unhinged message accusing me of emotional abuse, claiming I had manipulated him by hiding my mental health until he was too invested to leave. He said he had wasted 2 years on me and actually demanded, that I give him $3,000 to cover his living expenses. It would have been laughable if it wasn't terrifying. I didn't reply. I saved it, archived it with everything else. My hands shook, not from fear, but from disbelief that someone could twist reality that violently. Then came the moment everything changed. He showed up at my workplace. My receptionist called to say a man was there asking for me. My blood ran cold. I told him I wasn't available and he needed to leave. He didn't. He caused a scene. Security had to escort him out of the building while I watched from a window, my stomach knotted. My boss pulled me aside afterward, concerned but firm. Keep personal drama off company property. That night, I broke my silence and called him. He answered on the first ring, breathless with hope. Oh my God, you called. I knew. Stop, listen to me carefully. For the first time, my voice didn't shake. For the first time, he heard strength instead of fear. I told him to stop showing up, stop contacting me, stop sending people to speak for him. I told him the truth. He hadn't come back for love. He'd come back for rescue, and I wasn't his lifeline. He cried, he begged, he blamed, he twisted. None of it mattered. I hung up. 2 days later, he sent a Venmo request for $3,000. The note read, "You know what this is for?" I declined it, blocked him on Venmo too. But he still had one more line to cross, and he was about to cross it. After the Venmo request, I expected silence. Anger maybe, but silence. Instead, everything went eerily quiet, like the moment before a storm breaks. I should have known he wasn't done. People like him don't stop when you set boundaries. They stop only when every possible avenue is exhausted. The final line he chose to cross came on a Wednesday morning. I was at work, sitting at my desk with a cup of coffee growing cold beside me, reviewing timelines for a project that had already eaten half my sanity. My phone buzzed with a call from my mom. She rarely called during work hours unless it was something important, so I picked up immediately. Her voice was tight in a way that made my stomach clench. "Sweetheart, your ex called me." My blood ran cold. "He what?" "He called saying it was an emergency. He asked me to convince you to talk to him. He said you were refusing to help him, even though he had nowhere else to turn." Her tone sharpened, edged with the steel only mothers have. "I told him this is not my business, and if my daughter doesn't want to talk to you, that's reason enough." And then I hung up. I closed my eyes, pressing my fingers to my temples as a wave of nausea rolled through me. He had crossed every boundary already. Email, doorstep, workplace, mutual friends, his mother. And now he had reached into the last sacred place I had left. My family. The people I trusted completely. The people who had nothing to do with the mess he made. I felt the walls of my emotional strength buckle. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even scared. I was tired. So deeply, profoundly tired. Tired of being hunted by someone who once claimed to love me. Tired of having to defend myself for choosing peace. Tired of being the villain in the story he told himself. When I finished explaining everything to my mom, the breakup text, the emotional baggage line, the months of silence, the sudden letter asking for money, she went quiet. For a moment, all I heard was her steady breathing on the other end of the call. Then she said softly, "That poor man made a terrible mistake when he walked away from you, and now he is living with the consequences of his choices, but his consequences are not your responsibility." Something in me cracked, not painfully, but with relief, validation, support, clarity. And then finally, release. After I hung up, the weight of the past months settled on my shoulders all at once. I went to the restroom, locked myself inside, and let my back slide down the wall until I was sitting on the cold tile floor. For the first time since the breakup, I felt genuinely afraid. Not of him physically, but of how much of my life he had tried to reclaim, how relentless he had been, how easily he could twist narratives, feelings, boundaries. I pressed my hands against my face and let out a sound, somewhere between a sob and a breath. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was the breaking point of a woman who had held herself together for far too long. I thought about the girl I had been before him, resilient, independent, hopeful, and the girl I had been with him, careful, treading lightly, afraid to be too much. And the girl I was now, stronger maybe, but exhausted, healing maybe, but hunted, growing maybe, but tired. So tired. That exhaustion sat heavy in my bones as I walked back to my desk. Deadlines blurred, voices muffled. The world felt distant, muted, like I was drifting outside myself. The truth that hit me hardest was this. I had done nothing wrong. I had been honest, vulnerable, human. He had been selfish, impulsive, entitled. But still, he had dragged me back into his chaos, as if my healing was just another resource he was entitled to take. By the time I got home that evening, I wasn't angry anymore. Anger required energy. I had none left. I ate dinner, mechanically, showered without noticing the water, sat on the couch, staring at nothing. For the first time, I wondered how much longer this would continue, how much more he would try, how many more boundaries he would violate. And in that moment, for the first time, I considered the possibility that I might never get my peace back unless I took it. Not asked for it, not hoped for it, but claimed it. Because the person I had become, the one curled up on the bathroom floor at work, deserved protection. Even if I had to protect myself from someone I once loved. In the days after my ex called my mother, something inside me shifted. I didn't explode, didn't break down, didn't spiral. Instead, a cold, steady clarity settled over me, the kind that comes not from anger, but from exhaustion, so deep it becomes resolve. I realized something simple. I had been hoping he would stop. People like him don't stop. They escalate until someone makes them. So, one quiet evening after work, I sat on my couch, phone in hand, staring at the man who had spent months trying to claw his way back into my life. I had avoided calling him for half a year, terrified of giving him even a thread to follow. But now I understood that silence alone wasn't enough. I needed to draw a line he could hear, one he couldn't twist, manipulate, or pretend not to understand. I took a breath and pressed call. He answered immediately, voice bright and breathless, overflowing with hope I no longer felt responsible for. "Oh my God, you called—" "Don't get excited," I said sharply. "This is not what you think it is." He fell silent. Good. He was finally listening. "You've shown up at my building. You've emailed me. You sent your mother to guilt me. You dragged our mutual friends in. And then you called my parents." My voice was steady, colder than I'd ever spoken to him. "This ends now." He tried to jump in. I was desperate. You're the only person But I didn't let him. You left me, I said. And you didn't just leave. You abandoned me at the exact moment I was most vulnerable. So don't you dare rewrite history and call this desperation. This is entitlement. There was a beat of silence before he asked, voice trembling, "So you're really not going to help me?" "No," I said simply. "I'm not." He inhaled sharply, offended. "After everything we shared? After all the time I gave you?" I almost laughed. Not in amusement, but in disbelief at how deeply he misunderstood our relationship. "You didn't give me anything," I said. "You took. And the moment I needed something real in return, support, compassion, basic human decency, you ran." He whispered, "I don't have anyone else." "That's not my responsibility," I replied. "You built this situation. You pushed everyone away. And you don't get to use their absence as a reason to drag me back." He tried again, frantic now. "So that's it? You're cutting me off?" "I cut you off 6 months ago," I said. "You just refused to notice." Before he could speak again, I ended the call. 2 days later, he proved everything I'd said was true by sending a $3,000 Venmo request with the message, "You know what this is for." There was no sadness in me when I blocked him. No guilt, just a quiet, grounded sense of relief. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something powerful bloom inside my ribs. Self-protection. And I was finally ready to defend it. After blocking him on Venmo, the silence that followed didn't feel threatening. It didn't feel waiting or ominous. It felt earned. For the first time, I sensed he had hit a wall he couldn't push through. But narcissistic desperation doesn't disappear. It redirects. And the next place it turned was the last place I expected. One Sunday afternoon, my mom called, sounding puzzled but composed. "That young man called me," she said. It wasn't anger in her voice, it was disbelief. I felt my breath catch. "He what?" "He told me you were abandoning him during an emergency," she said. "He wanted me to convince you to call him." My mother, who has survived enough life to recognize manipulation in all its forms, shut him down immediately. "I told him that if my daughter doesn't want to talk to you, then I won't either," and I hung up. When she told me this, I didn't cry or panic. I felt something collapse quietly inside me, some last remaining thread of mercy I hadn't realized I was still holding on to. I explained everything to her. The breakup text, the emotional baggage line, the 6 months of silence, the letter begging for help, the appearances at my door and at work, the Venmo request. She listened, not interrupting once. Then she said a sentence I will carry with me for the rest of my life. "He chose to lose you. He doesn't get to decide the consequences that follow." That sentence cut the final tie between us. A few weeks passed. My life slowly regained shape. I slept better. I laughed more. The tension in my shoulders loosened. My phone stopped feeling like a weapon. Then my mutual friend reached out again, hesitant, apologetic. "I think you should know. He's been asking everyone for money, not just you." She explained how he had reached out to coworkers, acquaintances, extended relatives, anyone who might still pity him. He begged, guilt-tripped, dramatized. When they refused, he turned angry, accusatory. One by one, people distanced themselves from him. "He's burning every bridge he touches," she said. "I don't think you were the first, but you were the last to walk away." And that was the irony. He had always told me he feared abandonment, but he was the one who created it. Eventually, word reached me that he had moved back in with his parents, out of state, with no job, no savings, and almost no one left to manipulate. His downfall had nothing to do with me. It was simply the natural consequence of his choices collapsing under their own weight. For the first time since the breakup, I let myself breathe. Deeply, fully, without fear of what might come next. I was free. Healing didn't happen in a dramatic moment. It unfolded in small, quiet victories, waking up without dread, cooking dinner for myself without feeling the heaviness in my chest, going an entire week without replaying his words in my head. Therapy helped. My friends helped. But the biggest shift came from realizing I no longer needed to explain myself to anyone who saw vulnerability as weakness. I didn't start dating again. Not because I was broken, but because I finally cherished the peace I fought to rebuild. I took long walks, rearranged my apartment, reclaimed my routines. I filled my life with things that didn't demand anything from me except honesty. One afternoon, my therapist said something that clicked into place like the final piece of a puzzle. "You didn't lose a partner. You lost a relationship that couldn't hold the weight of who you really are." She was right. What I once mistook for love was actually convenience. A relationship that only worked when I appeared uncomplicated. The moment I needed something deeper, something human, it collapsed. Real love won't run from complexity. Real love won't label honesty as burden. Real love won't punish you for being human. I'm no longer ashamed of my anxiety. It isn't baggage. It isn't a flaw. It's simply a part of me, one that deserves compassion, not judgment. And next time, whenever that is, I will show all of myself from the beginning. Not as a test, not as a warning, but as truth. If someone can't handle that, they're not losing me. They're freeing me. Because sometimes the hardest heartbreaks don't break us. They reveal us.